Right, hello everyone, hello. Welcome to one of a series of interviews from the Festival of the Sound in Parry Sound, Ontario, Canada. My name's Keith Horner, helping celebrate 30 years of music making here in Parry Sound at the Festival of the Sound. I'm thrilled that we're starting this series of chats with some of my favorite performers, the Canadian Brass. Not just my favorite performers, but everybody's favorite performers, of course.
Thank you very much.
And that's true throughout the world. The 5 members of the Canadian Brass are on the cusp of celebrating 4 decades, 4 incredible decades at the very top of their profession. The Brass have not only, as it were, written the book by showing us what a quintet of brass instruments can really do on stage, they've also edited that book, constantly updated it, refined it, added supplement after supplement, as it were, published it and marketed it. They proved year after year that what it takes, above all, is superb musicianship. And they married this with a sharp knowledge of audience needs and a keen entrepreneurial business sense, which I hope to talk about. All these ingredients together have made them the best-known, best-loved brass quintet in the world. Founding members Chuck Daellenbach and Gene Watts are here just before they go out on stage to play the evening concert. Welcome to Parry Sound.
Thank you. Thank you.
You had a chance last night to sample the hall and its acoustics. What are your first impressions?
Overwhelming. It's beautiful. The audience is great. The intimacy is wonderful, and it's very easy to play in. Wonderful spot. You're very lucky, actually. I'm sure everyone who comes enjoys playing here.
I think so. I think that's true. But you've toured the world. You've been everywhere many times. I can't think how many frequent flyer miles you've accumulated. Have you had chance to get to know Georgian Bay in all that time?
Well, not professionally. This is the first appearance here for us, and we're really excited to be here. Actually, it's fun because it's back to back. We climb on a plane and go to Finland, so we're in another resort area, so it's quite fun.
Same clothes.
Absolutely.
Could you describe the Georgian Bay area for your fans around the world, if you had to do that? It's not far from home base, is it?
Well, it's very picturesque. I think, particularly traveling in the States, people have the concept that this is just a big ice flow up here, and it's just a gorgeous part of the earth. I think it's a little more rugged than down south. So there's more rocks and beautiful formations and things to look at. And the water's quite rough. Those of you who have boats, I know it seems like everybody here, does everybody in this audience right here now, do you own an island? Everyone we talk to owns an island.
There's 30,000 islands and 30,000 in the audience.
Well, Minnesota used to have on their license plate 10,000 lakes. And I noticed it was gone, and now I know why. They didn't realize. See, I think they didn't realize there's 30,000 here. So it's quite fascinating, really, really wonderful area.
Okay, I want to take you back 40 years. Well, actually, it's 36, so it'll be just like yesterday.
39.
36.
9.
I want to play something for you. I wonder if you can remember these guys. So, some friends from yesterday.
Elmer Eisner, probably the most important musical influence for us. Definitely. He found us in 1971. Ontario started a contact to put artists in touch with concert needs, cities and orchestras. And they brought everybody together into a symposium for a weekend. And we did our 20-minute recital thinking it would lead to concerts, which all that took place. But Dr. Eisler was in the audience, and he got very excited about the idea that we could be the counterbalance to voices, because he was always concerned about the pacing for voices, and that singers, you don't want to tire out their voices and get stringy. So he used us as the counterbalance and took us to Europe. We got to Europe before we were hardly known outside of our own houses, and we were already touring Europe with the festival singers. And one of the results was this CBC recording that you just performed.
And the sort of music that you play, the choral music and brass, parts didn't exist, did they? You know, you couldn't just go to a library and pull them off the shelf.
No.
You did and do pioneering work. And I don't think people realize the extent of this. Let's just talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think creation of repertoire has been uppermost in our minds since day one as an ensemble, when we were trying to decide how we would take instruments we love and the sound and the music that we knew. How do we present that to audiences with such a limited repertoire? So we decided that if we were going to borrow and adapt music, it might as well be masterpieces. Why settle for anything less? So we, of course, immediately went to Bach and started investigating the great composers that brass missed. Brass is a fairly recent invention in the music world. Valves weren't even invented until the early 1800s, and just in time for the orchestra revolution, when Berlioz, Brahms, Beethoven, this big, huge orchestra concept put the brass immediately in the back row. So we missed the chamber music value of brass, and that's what we've been trying. We're sort of facing both directions at the same time, creating the repertoire and also developing a path for brass. And that's where we have done a lot of research, and we've had a lot of help, some really fine writers over the years.
And much of this is published as well.
Yes.
So now brass ensembles throughout the world are playing Canadian brass arrangements.
That's true, and there's a lot of educational material that has, you know, people we meet in major orchestras, they say, I grew up on your books, and we played them, you know, in high school and been fans forever. It's very
Actually, one said my dad grew up with your books.
Or my grandmother. Yeah.
You've been really generous with your teaching time in master classes and direct one-on-one teaching, and you've got about, I think it's 600 of your works and arrangements printed by Hal Leonard. I even saw a sculpture at Banff at the Arts Centre when I was out for the string quartet competition, and there's the Canadian brass for their work.
We're very excited about that sculpture.
Outside the Harvey Theatre.
One year, an artist did a sculpture of Canadian brass, and it was basically steel and beautiful. It was huge. It was huge. And they put it up right next to the administration hall, and everybody thought this was very nice. And we came back maybe a year later, it was gone. And they were building the new art building in Banff. And flip forward about 15 years ago, I was there for a family function and drove up to Banff, came up the big hill, and right at the corner by the theater is the Canadian brass sculpture. They brought it back. I thought they used it for the construction, but they didn't. They put it back together and installed it on the hill. It's quite fun. We were either the first, that we started the brass quintet revolution, or we were just lucky to be there at the right time. But either way, we take credit for it. Because it is a burgeoning. I mean, there are, I would have to say, there would be hundreds of thousands of people with brass instruments in their hand that want to play. Yeah. And I think we've given them the hope that there is a possibility to actually perform. And one of the main places that musicians play are churches, because they sound beautiful. They tend to be, musicians are welcomed into churches. And interestingly, they can be any faith, and they'll get together in a group and play in churches, and it's a wonderful opportunity to perform. And also, we found early on that communities will support a lot of performance if you just invite yourself in. Libraries, we had a little library series when we started out. One of the ways that we developed a repertoire is we would just show up in the local library and set up shop and play. And this is what, this is how it all starts.
Wow. And Christmas,
Yes.
Salvation Army has set us up great.
Can we look just decade by decade and give me a kind of a landmark of the decades? What was the big breakthrough in the 70s?
China.
Ah, yes.
1977. We were on the world stage. At that time, Americans could not go to China. So all the news was being funneled to North America by Ross Monroe in the Globe and Mail. So we're in China getting reported in the New York Times. It was a wonderful thing. And we were the first Western group in. And we also were a subject, a paragraph in a book that came out of England about China at that time. So that really, as I said, world stage very early.
And that's responsible for our first big break, because people hadn't heard of us, but they knew we had gone to China. So we had slides of all these important places, you know, that people knew in China. And we had revolutionary music. When we got there, they presented us, you know, to ensure the success of our concert, they said, play this music. And it's all the revolutionary songs. And as a sidelight, after we played a concert, all of the revolutionary leaders would come up and they'd sing it to us. Say, well, you know, this should have been a little faster. And that, oh, very good. So we felt we learned it. But I think we did about 80 concerts the year we came back, playing the Chinese program. And then after that,
So the 80s were a big year for
Sure.
tour, a big decade for touring.
70s for China. 80 would have been Carnegie Hall. We really established that a brass ensemble, in fact, a chamber ensemble, could hold forth in the main hall at Carnegie Hall. It hadn't been done, and we really got no encouragement. We had to do it not by ourselves, but the idea we had to promote by ourselves. No one was encouraging us in that direction. And then we did get people to help, the right promoters, the right people. But that really, the review was perfect. It couldn't have been better. It said, this establishes Canadian brass as a major hall attraction. And the buzz had been out about Canadian brass all over North America. The concert, people wanted to book us in their 3,000-seat halls, but they were frankly afraid to do so.
Yes.
And then the Carnegie Hall saying, this establishes them. It was almost like we wrote the review. It was like, thank you very much.
Is that what got us on the Johnny Carson?
Johnny Carson show.
Yeah, they read the review.
All right, that's the 80s taken care of. Oh, what about the 90s?
Isn't that something that synthesizes in a small little bit?
I would think it was Europe, right? We started going into Europe, and at one time we were doing at least a third of all our concerts in Europe, going every year for a while, and then I guess Asia at the same time. I have to check my memory. But and so we did a lot of international touring.
Then I guess we're into the new millennium, are we? We did the 70s, 80s, 90s. I mean, compared with other groups, just keeping going, let alone being right at the top of the profession, is a remarkable achievement. Looking back over the past decade, you know, where are we? What stands out?
Well, for me, it's the fact that we are able to, on the one hand, we're very much alive and performing, but we're able to look over this and really associate ourselves with a lot of people that have sprung up as a result of what we've done. When we started, we felt like we were a little bit on a desert island musically. And now we have colleagues everywhere that really share the excitement and enthusiasm, and I think that's what the fun of performing now for me, certainly Gene is.
And they would follow us around. He said, you know, you guys are teaching us a lot.
Okay, now, following around, I'll tell you something that happened to us recently. When the wall came down in Germany, it changed Europe a lot. And one of the results, as the years went by, I think this was about 3 years ago, every concert hall, we would show up and we'd hear a brass group playing out front. So we walked out front to check it out, and it was an Eastern European group of young players that had come over, and they would set up in front of every one of our, they followed our whole tour. Every night, they'd stand out front, and they played our music. And they were good.
Canadian Brass buskers. Gene Watts and Chuck Daellenbach from the Canadian Brass. You can find out more about the Canadian Brass at canbrass.com, and festivalofthesound.ca is where you can find out about these interviews and this festival now celebrating its 30th anniversary. I'm Keith Horner. Goodbye.
Thank you.